That night, Casper talked a great deal about his exploits as a roamer. In the northern forest lands, he said, I came upon some old cabins that still had glass in the windows. It was quite a trick to get the glass out without breaking it. It took 4 days, but I managed. Did cut my hand a bit. He extended his large hand and pointed to a tiny scar on the palm. Quite a lot of blood from that. Poof! Then up near Hogsmarsh, I found a very valuable item. He gazed down at them, smiling slightly. What was it? Asked Torin, who had forgotten for the moment to be mad at his brother. An ancient statue, said Casper. An ancient statue, said Casper. It depicts some very rare sort of bird, with a long neck and only one leg. You can see that it was once painted pink. Pink! He paused to let the wonder of this sink in. Pink, tink, stink, said Poppy. Pinky stinky. She stared at Casper and giggled. Nah. Hush, Poppy, said Lena. Then in Ardenwood, Casper went on, idly twisting his tiny mustache, I had to fend off a few bandits. Bandits? Cried Torin. Really? Well, they might as well have been bandits, Casper said. Turned out they had no weapons, but they were set on stealing from me, that's for sure. I got rid of them fast with a few well-placed lashes. Casper sliced his arm through the air as if he were cracking a whip. And a good thing, too, he went on, because not far from there I located another special thing. Several boxes of authentic, pre-disaster artificial flowers. They're made of very fine cloth, hardly faded at all. Artificial flowers? Said Lena, wondering why the people of Sparks would want fake flowers when they had real ones growing everywhere. Yes, said Casper, I have a sort of knack for finding unusual things. Maddie didn't join much in the conversation. Once Miss Murdo, being polite, asked her if she too enjoyed being a roamer, but she only smiled a little and said, I don't mind it at all. There are worse things to do. Mrs. Murdo waited to hear about the worst things, but it seemed that was all she was going to say. When it was bedtime, Casper went up to the loft, and Torin dashed up after him. Maddie took Torin's place in the medicine room, saying a brief goodnight and closing the door firmly after her. The doctor helped Lena and Mrs. Murdo make up beds of pads and blankets on the couch and on the floor. It sounds interesting to be a roamer, Lena said. I suppose so, said the doctor. And Casper has a special knack for finding things? The doctor bent over and spoke softly into Lena's ear. He has a knack for finding the wrong things, she said. He's always bringing loads of things people already have, and not finding the things people really need. Artificial flowers, she said warily. What are we going to do with artificial flowers? The bed being made up, she went around the room and blew out the candles, and blew out all the candles but one. He's always been a bit odd, said the doctor. Looks as if he's gotten even odder since he was here last. He tries hard, though. You can say that for him. He has high ambitions. He wants to be a famous roamer. He doesn't know that he's a bit famous already among other roamers, but not famous the way he'd like. She handed the last candle to Lena and stumped out of the room. The next day was strange and unpleasant. Casper sat in the big armchair telling stories about his adventures while Torin hovered around him asking questions. Lena listened for a while. She was curious about this work of roaming. It sounded exciting, but like something she might want to do herself. But soon she got bored, because it seemed to her that Casper never said much about the really interesting parts of his adventures. She wanted to hear what the faraway places were like, and how the old buildings looked, and everything that was in the buildings. But all Casper talked about was how brave and clever he'd been to find the things he'd found, and the injuries he'd suffered finding them. Maddie didn't listen to Casper. She spent most of her time in the courtyard of the garden, motionless and silent, gazing at the plants, her arms folded across her wide waist. Every now and then she plucked a leaf or blossom, rubbed it between her fingers, and sniffed it. Once she asked Lena what a certain plant was. I'm not sure, Lena said. I only know a few of them. Then you know more than I do, said Maddie, flashing Lena an unexpected smile. But other than that, she said almost nothing to anyone. She didn't seem angry or unhappy, just off in her own world. Lena wondered about her, but felt far too shy to ask questions. After a while, Caspar shooed Torin away, sat down at the table, and pulled some scraps of paper from his pocket. He spread them out and bent over them, and his jovial, boastful manner changed. He ran his finger along the lines of writing on the papers. He wrote on them with a stubby pencil, and as he did so, he frowned and muttered, and mumbled to himself. Words that sounded like nonsense to Lena, except for the occasional string of numbers. 3578, he would say. 442309. She wandered up behind him and tried to look over his shoulder. After all, she had experience with torn documents and hard to decipher bits of writing. But Caspar twisted around and scowled at her, holding his hands over the papers. Private! Keep away! He said. He wouldn't let Torin see either, so Torin sat at the window seat and sulked. Around mid-afternoon, the doctor rushed in the door, looking even more frazzled than usual. Her shirt was smudged with blood, and her shirt tails were half tucked in and half not. I'm out of clean bandages, she said. Lena, did you do them? I need some, and I need the lavender extract, a bottle of it. No, I'd better get 2 bottles. She hurried into the medicine room. Lena had forgotten all about the bandages. She dashed into the kitchen, pulled some rags from the basket, and tore them into strips. She took these to the doctor, who was on her knees rummaging through a chest. And, the doctor said, I'm going to have to make some mustard plasters tonight. You'll need to go out into the orchard and gather some of the mustard flowers. I need a lot. Get the leaves, too, and the roots. I want the whole plant. She found her bottles of oil, thrust them into her bag along with the bandages, and rushed out the door again. Lena felt her spirits sink down to her shoes. It was too hot. It was ferociously hot. She was sick of being hot, having her neck damp beneath her long hair and her clothes sticking on her back. She was sick of doing chores. Ugh! She shuffled out into the courtyard, where a few of the doctor's seedlings were drying up in their pots. She trudged to the pump, filled a bucket, and splashed some water on each limp plant. Then she sat down in the shade of the grapevine and leaned against the wall beneath the window and thought about everything that was wrong. She was mad at the doctor for giving her so much work to do and hardly noticing when she did it. She was mad at Mrs. Murdo for not moving them to the Pioneer Hotel, and she was lonely. She missed being with people she knew. Especially she missed being with Dune in the old way, the way they had been together when they were partners in Ember. Now he seemed to care more for his new friends than he did for her. Every time she thought about him, she felt a thud of pain, like a bruised place in her heart. From the window, just above her head, Lena heard Caspar's voice. Not now, he said. I have to do some planning. I need quiet. The door opened, and Torin stormed out. He threw a furious glance at Lena, but didn't speak. He ran through the gate and up the road. He's mad, too, thought Lena. Everyone's mad. From inside, she heard Caspar's voice again, startlingly near. He was talking to Maddie, who must have come into the kitchen door. Lena realized they were standing by the window just behind her. We'll need to head out day after tomorrow, said Caspar, starting early. Uh-huh, said Maddie in her low, growly voice. All those stories about germs still lurk in there, Caspar said. They're nonsense, you know. Those germs died out long ago. No doubt you're right, said Maddie. They were talking about this city. Lena sat very still and listened harder. People talk about other kinds of danger there, too. Caspar went on. Bandits and so on. Doesn't bother me. Course not, Maddie said. And anyway, even if there is danger, said Caspar, it's worth the risk because of what we're going to find. You sound very sure we're going to find it, said Maddie. Of course I'm sure, said Caspar. Aren't you? The answer to this was just a grunt. They moved away from the window, and their voices grew fainter. Maddie spoke next, but Lena couldn't hear all of what she said, but she caught the words, how far? And in Caspar's answer, she heard the words, day's journey. Then she heard steps clomping up the stairs to the loft, and the room went quiet. Lena sat very still, Her bad mood faded. Other thoughts swirled in her mind. She was remembering the sparkling city whose picture she had drawn so many times. A great city of light, the city she had always believed in. Now, Casper was planning to go there. It wasn't dangerous anymore, and it was only a day's journey away. She knew, of course, that the city Casper was talking about had been damaged, like everything else, in the disaster. But the beautiful shining city she had imagined must have been this city in the past, in the time before the disaster. In her mind, she revised her vision of the city. Some of the high towers would have toppled, and their windows would be broken. Stones from the ruined buildings would have fallen into the street. The rooms would have caved in. But the idea that stuck her was this. Maybe the people of Ember were meant to restore the city. Perhaps their great job, the reason they'd come up into the new world, was to live in the city and rebuild it, so that once again it was the glorious, shining city of Lena's vision. This was such a beautiful idea. That night she lay in bed thinking about it, and the more she thought, the more sure she was, and the more excited.